Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Narcissism Decoder. I'm your host, Dr. Anthony Mazzella. Today, we have the privilege of being joined by Jin. Jin is a writer, educator, podcaster, and a narcissistic abuse recovery facilitator. While she's been writing throughout her career, she eventually shifted her focus exclusively to recovery from the trauma of narcissistic abuse. She recently published her 300th article on the subject, and her vast library of work can be found on her website. I'll include the link in the show notes. Jin and I recently recorded an episode where we took a deep dive into why someone gets stuck in a toxic, narcissistic relationship and why escaping can feel impossible. I released segments of that conversation, but if you want to hear the full episode, check it out on her channel. I'll link it in the show notes. Today, Jin and I are going to explore how to recover and heal after leaving a toxic narcissistic relationship. I'm really excited to have her here to share her insights on this topic. Hello, and welcome to the Narcissism Decoder podcast, Jin.
Hello.
So, shall I jump right in where, as I mentioned a moment ago, we're thinking about some of the biggest challenges that people face when they start to think about or they have already left what we're calling a narcissistic or like a toxic narcissistic relationship.
Yes. Well, there are a lot of reasons that people don't go, and that when they do go, they can't seem to recover. I think the first thing I would like to begin with, it's kind of like being in a cult. And
Yeah.
to a large degree, there has to be some kind of deprogramming that happens. And as we all know, if you are in a cult, you can't hear voices of reasoning coming to you from friends and family and those who love you. You are out of reach. You have fallen down a rabbit hole. You are in a different parallel universe. You have departed reality. And so you cannot respond to those who are trying to warn you or help you or any of those things. And that makes it really hard because I know that the people around you just can't understand why you're so unresponsive and why you're being so irrational and staying with a person where you are totally blind to what is so obvious to them.
Yes.
So I would say the whole cult factor would be the first thing that comes to mind.
Yeah, I could picture it, but please let me know what you think. But I can imagine, like on a severe end, when you leave a cult, you don't know who you are. You can't manage your life, probably even just everyday daily task of living, going on with your life become incredibly challenging. And there's probably not just sadness, but a deep sense of loss, maybe rage, feelings of inadequacy. I don't know, Jim,
I think that it depends on what type of narcissist that you are partnering with. If it is an overt narcissist that is grandiose and everybody can see clearly that they have grandiosity and entitlement and that they are that type, then they are the ones who will be emotionally and sometimes physically volatile and who may throw tantrums and they may rage and scream and yell and do a sort of Jekyll and Hyde routine on you. But the covert, vulnerable, shy narcissist is quite another phenomena in the sense that many times they are very soft-spoken and very kind and appear very altruistic, and they have everybody charmed and seduced and convinced that they're the neatest thing since sliced bread. And even when they're behind closed doors, they keep that mask on, and you don't get to see what's behind it. So you want to believe that they are everything that they're pretending to be. And so you just don't want to look underneath the hood. You just think, wow, this is so perfect. So for those reasons, it depends on what type you're with. Now, most of the people that I have had for clients and have worked with in groups, including my own anecdotal experiences, have been with the covert type. And so I will speak to that. When you're in the relationship with them, you are in a shared fantasy. So
Yes.
you don't know you're being abused. It's like the frog in the tepid water. The heat is turned up gradually. You're cycling through these different cycles of narcissistic abuse so slowly, so gently, so smoothly that you don't even know how horrible it is, what's happening to you. You don't feel it. You don't notice it. I think I've described it as kind of like it's death by 1,000 little cuts, and you just ignore them because there's so much other good stuff that you love so much. They profess
Yes.
to be your dream come true, and they do a really good job of presenting themselves as such so that you just look away and try to ignore the things that should be red flags that would signal a neurotypical person to run away. And I think that most people who stay for long periods of time and have the worst difficulty recovering are those that are vulnerable to it in the first place. And that's why
Yes.
they leaned in instead of running away when other people would have just said, there's something really wrong here. You don't say that. And your boundaries are pretty weak or invisible, and you just don't have the skills that you need to navigate that. So you just fall into it. It's like being brainwashed in a cult. You get hypnotized and all of these other things. And I think I mentioned in part one about the trauma bonding and the intermittent reinforcement. I think that intermittent reinforcement in this case of in a narcissistic cycle of abuse, it has to do with neurochemicals in your brain. When the narcissist abuses you and then becomes your knight in shining armor, all in a really neck break speed, it's just like dizzying how quickly they can shift from doing atrocious things to being so perfect. All those chemicals just flood your body and brain, dopamine, all of those love chemicals and comfort soothing chemicals, the ones you get from eating chocolate. And that feels so great that you become addicted to it and
Yeah.
reliant upon it, and you crave it like a drug. And
Yes.
many people will say you can be kind of some narcissist junkie or love junkie in the sense that you're addicted to those chemicals that flood your body when the narcissist gives you relief from the abuse that's very insidious abuse, very sneaky, hard to really put your finger on it, but it's still abuse. And then when they stop, it's very addictive. It's very
Yeah.
addictive to get relief. They say torturers use the same exact dynamic, that tactic of horrible abuse and torture, and then they will let you take a shower and give you a nice warm meal, let you have a break, let you have a moment of relief where you're just so grateful for that, and then they abuse you again. If it
You
was
know, it's so,
nonstop abuse, I think you would shut down somehow. But
yeah.
by the back and forth, that's how they get you.
You know, it's so interesting. I didn't think about this last time that you and I spoke, but the intermittent reinforcement that you just mentioned, it fits, in my mind at least, into a theory that I was building up last time, which was what I was calling or referring to as pathological mourning, meaning there's a loss, there's such a sense of loss and a desperation, a real need to feel recognized, right? So when you get this intermittent reinforcement, it's like, wow, finally I'm being seen. This is amazing. This is wonderful. This is everything that I've been living for. This is why I stay in this relationship because
Yes,
they see me and they recognize me now. Yeah.
exactly. And let's not discount the whole neurochemicals, serotonin, cortisol, dopamine, all of the ones
Oh,
that
yes.
are at play that regulate emotions, and they are very powerful. Ask any person who's been through menopause about
Yeah.
hormones being like life changing. They really are. And it's addictive. And the longer you stay, the more you have a kind of learned helplessness where you just let your codependent tendencies take over and you just turn everything over to them. They become your alpha and omega. And I think in a lot of these relationships, the narcissist thinks they are God, and their partner follows them as an acolyte, like a cult member or a groupie or whatever you want to call it, that never just doesn't question them and believes what they believe and accepts everything that they're told. And they just, it's a kind of shrinking of their own identity, their soul, their agency and empowerment, all of that just shrinks and atrophies throughout the time spent with these disordered people because they're not allowed to have that. And you don't even miss it because you're so plugged into the drug that is the narcissist.
Listening to your content, one thing that I heard you mention in an earlier interview that you did,
Yes.
and it also got me thinking of this, is so when you extract yourself from this relationship, all of what you're describing here, the shared fantasy, this what we call the magical union between you and this omnipotent other person who's going to take care and recognize you, it's a loss, right? That's what we were saying. It's a big loss. But one thing that you're not losing, I think, and I've heard you reference this before, but maybe we could flush it out, is when you leave, again, to your point, depending on what type of narcissist you're with, like if you're with more of the covert, there's a lot of criticism that goes along in that relationship. Like you are constantly being made to feel guilty, you're doing something wrong, you're being criticized, you never really seem to get it right. And I imagine that when you leave, you're free of them, but that voice still lingers on inside of you. And I'm wondering, is that also then, does that need to become part of the healing process after you leave, is to try to do something with that voice?
There's quite a few YouTube lectures that Dr. Sam Vaknin gives on what he calls introjects and the inner voice.
Yes.
And these introjects, that is the narcissist voice that is inside your head, that remains long after they're gone. And it is a critical voice that has been used to control you all this time. And so it lives on in there. And you might not even notice that it is critical, anything like that. It's very sneaky, very subtle sometimes with the covert narcissist. They don't say it in a mean way. They will smile and say, I'm just trying to help, but that dress makes you look really fat. Or they'll say, I saw a video where a lady was using soup cans and doing this exercise with her arms to get rid of that flabby part, like chicken wings. Is that what it's called? Is it called chicken wings? Those things that you have there under your arms? Maybe we could try that soup can technique, and maybe that would help you. It comes out like that. Never as a in your face, like, why did you do that? Or, you're so dumb. That's the overt narcissist. You might do that. The covert will come across and present it to you as being helpful because I love you, because I'm a sweetie pie. I just want what's best for you. And so let me tell you, and then they'll tell you the worst things. So yes, that voice lives on and it's very hard to get it out.
And when it's not coming out like the way you just described, it also probably goes, and what I hear actually in talking to these individuals, it goes against the self too. So in other words, I'm worthless. I'll never find somebody again. I'm so pathetic. I'm a loser. These are the sort of things that I hear with that critical voice. So if somebody with the flabby arms is not around to direct it towards, it has to go somewhere. Yeah.
So it goes inward and you criticize yourself. You look in the mirror and you see those flabby arms because that's been implanted in you. It's a hook. It's a barb that's internalized. And can you imagine trying to pull that out? What kind of damage it's going to do? How hard that's going to be? Because it's going to rip and shred everything all around it. And it's so deeply embedded in there.
Yeah, it's
part of
you.
your identity.
Yes. Yeah.
And you have to learn to trust your own voice and have a strong enough identity and concept of self so that you know who you are. You know what your limits are. You know what you want. You know what you'll stand for. You need to know that to be healthy. And the narcissist takes that from you so that you have no voice. You have no inner voice. It's like your conscience, which for some people, that conscience is something almost religious. Like that's the voice of God speaking to you. All of that is gone and you have nothing. You're just a shell with just ghosts and echoes going on in there. Those tapes playing over and over again, that same message over and over in repeat.
Yeah.
That you are those things. You are fat. You are flabby. Nobody wants you. And you draw your own conclusions. So it is a very long and painful process to reclaim your own voice and learn to trust your voice and to get their voice out.
It's like almost like starting, I don't know if I'm exaggerating this a little bit, but like from ground zero. You're not just,
Absolutely.
yeah. And I'm glad we talked about the voice for another reason. Last time you and I met, we were talking about when someone stays in this type of relationship, how there's the voice of salvation, that they're going to feel recognized, they're going to be appreciated, they're so wonderful. But the other side of that voice, which we didn't discuss, is when there's any sort of separation or things are not going so glowingly positive in the relationship, it comes down on the other end. So it's like whatever goes up, whatever's so wonderful. Oh, kind of like the dopamine hit that you mentioned earlier, right? Like whatever goes up must come down. Yeah.
I think that there's so much loss. You mentioned, I know what I've heard it, I think in the DSM diagnostic manual, it calls it prolonged grief
I've
syndrome.
heard that. Yes, I
As a
heard that.
diagnosis, this sense of loss you cannot overcome it because you're grieving so many things. You're not grieving just the loss of a relationship. You miss that person, you crave that person because you're addicted to that person. That would be bad enough. But you're also grieving the loss of a child because in many ways that was the relationship, like parent-child. You
Yep.
could be grieving the loss of a parent, like a mother or father, because the narcissist and their partner parentify one another and
Yes.
they play parent to each other. And there's sort of an unspoken tacit agreement that we're going to mutually parent each other and love each other unconditionally and be the parent that neither one of us had that. And if you agree to that, I'll be everything that you ever dreamed of. But you
Wait,
have
let's
to
hover
agree
over
to
this. Let's hover over this
be my
just for a
parent.
moment because this one is really important. So, how can you flesh that out a little bit more? So, I'm picturing somebody in this relationship, and you're saying there's not just the loss of the person, right? And we spoke about this a little bit. It's the loss of a fantasy. And part of the fantasy you're telling us now is yourself as a child. But how does that work? Like, how does that come about? Like, in other words, how are you a child in that relationship?
Well, you bring forward your toxic scripting, bad parenting, faulty programming, archaic wounds, whatever you want to call it. Most people
Okay.
do have trauma, some much worse than others. Some leaves a permanent imprint on them so that they go through their lives searching for a mother or a father that was never the mother or father that they wanted or needed. That person was not there to provide the guidance to help them through the developmental stages that you're
Yeah.
supposed to go through to teach you how to be a human. You watch that parent and mimic them and bond with them, and there's just so many things that you have to have from the parent that if you don't have it, there's this huge gaping hole. It's a deficit. And so you seek relationships with people like narcissists who also have that. Narcissists are also victims of trauma. They are trauma
Oh, yeah.
that their response to what happened to them was a maladaptive response to create a false persona that was bulletproof so no one could harm them. The parent that was abusing them or neglecting them didn't matter. Nobody could hurt them anymore. And it's just an imaginary version of themselves. And the poor, weak, scared, frightened, tormented, suffering, authentic version of themselves, they have dispatched it. They have euthanized it. They have it tied up and duct taped in the closet, and it's not coming out. There's 100 locks on the door. And so, with the person that connects with the narcissist, they see you because
Yeah.
they study you and they reflect you and they mirror you. They parrot and mimic you because they don't have any interior self. They have no identity, no real ego, none of that. And so they have to take it from you and they're just like a mirror. So when they do that, you see yourself. And through seeing yourself, it's like you fall in love with yourself through the mother's gaze that you never received. So they're
Yes.
a proxy parent serving in that role to allow you to go through those developmental stages and learn to see yourself, to be seen, to validate yourself, to be validated, to develop as a healthy individual because you never got that chance with your parent of origin. So, and you do the same for them. It's like you're both playing mother to each other. on a very deep in the psyche in such a way, it's so profound. It's just like a lock that
Yeah.
binds you together in ways that you would even stronger than with the parent. So you've got that to grieve. It's like losing that parent. You've lost the opportunity to see yourself and love yourself and experience your childhood all over again with a person who's going to validate you and do all those things because you're doing that for them. And they have empathy. Everybody says they don't, but it's cold empathy, meaning you can teach them what they're supposed to do in reaction to certain things. You're supposed to cry here, laugh here, be sad here, be looking like you're sorry here. And they study you so well, and they're such good actors. Even the most trained professional cannot tell when they are genuinely feeling it or whether they're just acting it. And I think this is a point that we had a little bit of conflicting perspectives about. I think most research and most people will say that you can't cure narcissism. You can't really change the fact of like how they're experiencing the world and how they are lacking empathy and remorse and all of that. That's not giving someone empathy or showing them how to view good and evil and have morals and a conscience and being remorseful about hurting other people and that kind of thing. There's nothing, that's emotional empathy. Cold empathy is you know what you're supposed to do and you very convincingly do that.
I'll speak to it just very quickly because I think you're right. This is a point where you and I see it a little differently. But the way it typically changes is you are right. Structurally in the mind, things develop in a way, but in part it changes. And this is where real empathy comes in. When they begin to perceive the world in a different way. So we have to keep in mind that there's what we call a projective introjective cycle. So they project out everything that's bad, negative, anger, hostility. And when you project that out, you imagine, you believe that it's really someone who's coming at you, someone who's hurting you. So as you begin slowly over time, and to your point, structural change takes time. When you can analyze the projection and help them, their experience of the world begins to change. In other words, the world isn't so dangerous. Now, it is true, with personality disorders, they are rigidified. In other words, they're rigid, they're ossified. Let me say that. So that's why it takes so long. And I think to your point, why most people say these people don't change. But when you're with them, session after session, and I mentioned this to you, you heard me say, I meet with them sometimes multiple times a week for long periods. Slowly over time, when you analyze the projections, what they begin to do is introject in a different way. So they're not just taking in negative experiences anymore. And these little shifts are what begin to lead to what we call in psychoanalysis structural change. And that's why I appreciate the word that you use, structure, because structures really do develop in the mind. But structures do change as well. It's a process that's very slow and not easy.
It's not just structurally the way your mental processes are designed. That's one kind of structure. I'm talking about your actual brain.
Yeah, but I see them as linked. Think about it just for a moment. What's going to fire in your mind if you're experiencing somebody as coming after you, attacking, judging, criticizing you? There's going to be a different circuitry if you experience someone as loving and caring. So those circuits do begin to change. Absolutely. So one of my last questions for you was actually going to be about when they're out of the relationship, what leads to genuine change and healing? But I know we're focusing now, not on the person who left, but like more on the, sort of the individual who has these narcissistic characteristics. But I got your take on that. So, but what about the person who's left? Is there any hope? Because remember, there was the shared fantasy, right? They were in this. What happens in terms of their healing process?
The person who is discarded didn't see it coming. Maybe there were little red flags, but by now they're experts at ignoring red flags, right? And so on any cognitive level, they did not see it coming. So they're totally unprepared. When that happens, you store trauma in your body. And what has happened to you has been a full delusional journey into the twilight zone.
Yeah.
So when you are come back to earth, you're going to crash with a thud and it's going to damn near kill you. And in my opinion, I think it is the death of you. And I don't think you can resurrect the same self that you were before. When you're discarded, essentially you're annihilated, you're existentially erased. You no longer exist.
Yeah.
Not just for the narcissist, but for yourself. Because your identity is so tied to them that when they're gone, you have none. So the reaction is usually one of complete meltdown. You're suicidal. No one else knows what's happening to you, why you're reacting that way. Your body may shake the way animals shake when you take them to the vet. Not just a little tremor, but your whole body just shaking so violently, and you don't know why. That's never happened to you before. You can't breathe. You have panic attacks. Your heart's beating out of your chest. You're sweating and you're shivering. I mean, it is a body experience. Mentally, you can't think. You're confused. You don't know what's real, what's not real.
You're decompensating.
You're in shock for maybe weeks. I think it requires a team. I think one person cannot do it. You can't just go to a group, find a narcissistic recovery abuse group online or something like that. NAMI, the mental health organization, has like Codependence Anonymous, groups like that you can find and go to. There's lots of groups. I'm a huge fan of finding your tribe. You need to find other people who speak your language, because regular people who've not experienced it or witnessed it have no idea what you're talking about. You don't have the knowledge or with the vocabulary to name what is happening to you, which is really frightening when you don't know what's happening to you, right? And so you need that tribe of people who may be further along in recovery than you to take you by the hand and help you. So that's one. I think mental health professionals who are trained in trauma, and look for the ones that have some understanding of narcissistic abuse, because it makes all the difference. If you go to a mental health professional and they're treating this generically, like it's just trauma or just PTSD or just like a divorce or breakup and broken heart or grief or something, it's not going to help you. I'm just going to say it. That's not helpful, and it can be more harmful than helpful. Well-intentioned therapists who don't know what this is can cause harm. So you need to find the people who are experts on narcissistic relationships with people that are disordered, mentally ill. It is a mental illness. And you got to find those people who know that and know the language and can help you navigate that. And don't expect your friends and family to understand or be there for you. It's too much. And this is the last thing I'll say, because I know we're running out of time. It was said before, I can't get too close to you because you're on fire. And if I get too close to you, I'm going to catch fire. I care about you. I want to help you. I don't understand what's happening to you. It's scaring me.
Yes. So, Jim, where do you come in on this process? Because I know you work with people who are recovering. Isn't that right?
I'm part of that team. I'm saying you need. You can't come just to me. Yes, there's a lot of things that I know I can tell you.
Yeah. I could see one other place that you could be very, very helpful. You didn't put this on your list, but I'll just add it. Not that I'm not suggesting that you do it, but I could see where you would come in really handy. As you mentioned a moment ago, when they're in that sort of decompensated state, they don't even have the words. They don't even know what's happening to them. And clearly you have the words. You are so articulate when it comes to this on like such a visceral level that I could imagine anybody sitting with you who's not able to articulate what they're going through and use language, that you could be really helpful in that way. But look, we do have to wrap it up on that note. And I want to extend a great deal of appreciation for you coming on the show, Jin. I really appreciated having you. And now we've done 2 episodes together, and this has really been enlightening. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It's been an honor. I love to have every opportunity to get the word out there. I want to reach people in crisis, suffering, confused. They don't know what's happening. I want to give them the answers, the explanation, the knowledge to empower them to take control and to be okay. Because there is life after these things happen to you.
Yeah.
But if you can't find the right people to help you in the right way, it is a horrible experience, and it's long and it's painful. And so I hope anyone who's listening to this, who's going through it, remembers you need to assemble a team of people to help you. Like both of us,
Yes.
and then probably a group and probably 2 or 3 other entities. It takes all of us, like a whole village.
It takes a community. Yes, yes, that's right. Well, thank you again, and you've certainly enriched me and my audience, so thank you for that. All right, everybody, we have to sign off for now. Until next time, bye for now. Disclaimer alert. The Narcissism Decoder podcast is provided for general information purposes only. The content presented in this podcast is not intended to diagnose, treat, or cure any psychological condition related to narcissism. The content on this podcast should not be considered a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. For specific advice pertaining to narcissism or any other psychological condition, you could reach me directly. I am an experienced mental health practitioner who is always taking on new patients. If you would just like a consultation, I can do that too.